Here we go. It's Scouring of Cheshire coming up next weekend, and this is the list that I'm going to be taking with me. Scouring of Cheshire is a 700 points tournament. It's a very big event. I think there's going to be about 100 of us, and this is the list that I'm going to take with me to the event. It's at Element Games in Stockport, which is just outside Manchester. So I'll be packing this up and taking it with me. And the list itself is very, very simple. It's the Witch King. He's got 3 might, 18 will, and 3 fate. He's on his Fell Beast, and he's got his shiny crown that gives him the 3 attacks and the reroll on cast and resist. And then with the Witch King, there's 5 Black Numenorians backed up by 5 Spear and Shield Morannons for the nice, strong, defensive, terror-causing wall at Fight 4, backed up by those Strength 4 Morannons. There's also a Black Numenorian banner. Opted for the Numenorian rather than a Morannon because I find it's easier to keep him safe when I'm not tempted to spear support. And causing terror as well is that little bonus. And then, along with them, there's also a Wargrider with shield and 4 trackers. And then, with identical warbands, there's Gorbag and Grishnak. They are the 3 might captain profiles for the Mordor list, with Grishnak being just that, whereas Gorbag has the special rule where he gets +1 attack and +1 fight when he outnumbers the opponent. And their warbands, they have, again, the 5 Black Numenorians with 5 Morannons with shield, although there is 1 shield missing on this guy, because otherwise it would have been 701 points. So he's missing a shield. And other than that, they all have shields. And then there's also a tracker and a Wargrider. And then we've also got the objective markers. These, the idea of those is that they're Palantirs, and the Force is looking for Palantirs. You've probably seen those on the channel. They tend to be on quite a bit if you've seen any of the other battle reports. So that is the army that I'm going to be taking. It's pretty simple. It does have some tricks with the Witch King. He can sort of use and abuse people a little bit, but other than that, it's kind of a shield wall grind and just have some fun with it. So with that, I'll get them boxed up, packed away, and I'll see you at Scouring. Here we go. So, having arrived, the first thing that strikes me is how incredible some of these boards are. There's top table and bottom table have your sort of normal boards, so to speak, but in the middle, there are these incredible scenic boards. There's maybe 15, 20 or so, and they are incredible. Just a couple of them on the screen going through, but there were quite a few that I didn't manage to get photos of, and they were really, really stunning. And I did manage to get a couple of games on a few that we'll see in a little bit more detail. They were really, really impressive. My first game was up at table 12, which was against Angmar, and he had a Shade, Birder, and a Barrow-wight backed up by a rival Witch King. His Witch King was on a horse with the crown and had 3 might, 13 will, and 2 fate. More than enough, it would appear, to abuse my higher stat Witch King. So this is us at deployment. It was assassination. I couldn't even tell you who my assassin was because I knew full well and neither Gorbag nor Grishnak could ever do the deed. I believe I chose Gorbag. My target was his Barrow-wight. I figured he was probably the easiest to kill. Birdo would be on the front, but is much more difficult to kill. Certainly when I'm trying to protect my captains. So we deploy. at the 12-inch mark, and that's the beginning of the battle. So first turn, going straight for some kills. He has priority, so he comes forward, and the Witch King then flies over the line, which stays stationary because it's in quite a good defensive position there. He flies over, compels someone forward, and charges in so that he's able to get a nice hurl outside of the shade -1 bubble. He heroic combats off that hurl back to the safety of his line, and that gets 4 kills. It costs 3 will and a might, but because we both started on 43 models, I have to have more than him for my army bonus to kick in, which is +1 courage and re-rolling 1s to wound on infantry, on troops rather. So it seemed like a good idea, and it was very fun. So that was the first turn. And then this picture is probably about 25-30 minutes later of a lot of sort of gesturing and posturing. Neither of us quite being able to charge the other, with their priority being in the wrong hands and failing courage tests and that kind of messing around. Witch King finally goes in and really, really regrets it. He's realistically the only one that could charge. My line then forms around him to stop him getting countercharged, and he gets transfixed and paralysed. He successfully gets rid of the paralysed, but the transfix goes through. He's getting drain-willed all the time. My Witch King, even though he's got significantly more will than his, is just getting abused. He loses the combat because he's transfixed, and it's not looking good for the Witch King at this point. Fortunately, Grishnak the Brave is able to call a heroic move the next turn, and Burder counters, or the Witch King, somebody. Fortunately, it goes to me. So the Grishnak runs away with the Witch King in tow just to get the Witch King out of dodge. He was going to get clobbered. He was down to very low will by this point from all of the abuse, and there was just very little I could do there. Fortunately, he got away. At this point now, I'm not too sure if I can take him, because the Witch King is my big damage dealer. Gorbag and Grishnak are okay, but I'm not sure who he's after. So either of them getting wounded or killed will give him victory points, and at this point, I can't really get any from him. So if I give away any victory points, I'm going to lose. And you can probably tell then where this game is going to go. For the next turn also, the Witch King runs away. You can actually see him right at the bottom left of the screen, hiding in a tiny little cutout. He's dismounted so that he can't be seen. He's just doing what he can to survive. At this point, he's got 3 will left. He's been drain-willed. Every spell he's tried to cast has failed, and he's just been completely useless. Other than that hurl that got me the army bonus, although now I believe I've lost it because he's starting to chew through stuff. We have charged in outside the shade range, but we're just really struggling to bring anything down, and the shade then rearranges so that everything's covered, and it's just horrendous. And so Gorbag and Grishnak run away. I'm fairly confident he's after Grishnak because he didn't go for Gorbag when he was paralysed and Burdo was close. But even so, just in case that was an error on his part, Gorbag runs away, Grishnak runs away, and then I'm getting a bit close to break. The whole army runs away. I get lucky on a couple of priorities, and I'm able to just fully disengage and run away, and then it goes to time. And it is a 0-0 draw because he couldn't quite break me. Even when he could catch up, he couldn't pass the courage tests, and he just couldn't break me. I was off break by maybe 5 or 6. He just couldn't quite do it. He'd have needed lots and lots of turns and quite a bit of luck for those courage 2 orcs to be able to charge my line.
I apologise to him for playing such a dull game, running away for the last sort of 20-30 minutes, but it's one of those where that's what you've got to do, and he fully understood and agreed that was, at that point, the only play that I had left. And so it was a 0-0 draw. It was a fun game. It was very bizarre. Two terrifying and fairly low courage armies. Once I lost my army bonus and with the -1, my guys are still only courage 3 on the front. I'm not charging reliably. When the Witch King was around, his guys were at courage 1, so he's not charging either. It was a very strange game, but it was fun in its own unique way. Game 2 is on this beautiful scenic board. It is a really, really fantastic looking board, but unfortunately we draw Seize the Prize, which means in the middle of that cave there is a prize to be dug up. Very thematic in the prize is in that troll horde, but a logistical nightmare. This is one of the only games that we rolled off for tableside, because as you can see, the wall on the furthest away side is shorter than on my side. So he wanted that side, and it's a competitive tournament, so fair enough. We rolled off, and I lost, which meant I had to move, which was horrible. So we swapped board sides from where we just ended up. Normally in games you just play where you are, but if there is a bit of an advantage, it's sometimes worth that roll off. It made things easier for his chariots as well, because they struggle to manoeuvre a bit. With that bigger wall, it would have hampered him. So this is after turn 1. We deployed at the 12-inch mark, and then everything just charged forward. I know that I'm going to take a horrendous beating from these chariots when they arrive, so I'm just running forward, trying to get on the objective first and hoping that I get quartered with the objective and it ends. And then I realise when he pointed out that if I get to 25% with the objective and he's not at 25%, it doesn't end. We both have to get to 25%. And then I rethink my strategy and cry a little bit, as I really don't know how I'm going to be able to get this prize from this very mobile army. His army, we should point out, has 6 chariots in it. One of them is the king, and one of them is a chieftain. He's also got some Carnish horsemen, some Carnish infantry, and then he's also got some Easterlings with an Easterling captain, beautifully converted to look more Carnish. They've got the signature Khan banner, and they've got the heads. It is an amazingly converted and painted army, and it really does look beautiful. Although when it's charging towards you, it just looks terrifying. So at this point, this is just turn 2. A heroic move allows me to run forward with Grishnak a few inches to behind the wall and get some guys out as well. It didn't give me any form of countercharge or anything like that because he was still too far away, but it put me in front of the objective. So if they got steamrolled, they got steamrolled, and it was just going to be a loss. But fortunately, the high defence, the chariots sort of bounced off them. They did get a couple of kills, but they bounced a little bit. And that really did help. That heroic move from Grishnak, which he's good at. Heroic moves from behind the line, getting people into position while he stays safe. He just bought time. It allowed that Warg Rider, who survived the bow shots, to dismount. He wasn't quite able to get the objective because Grishnak couldn't move close enough to the objective. But he, next turn, was able to get in and dig up the objective while we fought off against the tide of Khand, which was massive and terrifying. This was a really fun but also really intense game, so I didn't get that many photos of it. But the next thing that happened was the Witch King there flew up onto the troll cave house thing that you can see. And those three big tubbies, whatever they're called, those new ones, the acolytes, he charged in. He got shot by bowfire, but fortunately the guy he was charging didn't die. And he heroic combated into his king, who is at the sort of top of his big line. We were both fight 5. Bringing it down to a roll-off is never a good idea, but I wasn't quite sure what else I could do. Amazingly, he rolled about a 3 high with his guy, even with a banner re-roll, and he just couldn't beat the Witch King. The chariots are really, really tough. You have to roll and in the way to see if you hit the chariot and all this, and it's a nightmare. But because of Monstrous Charge, he's automatically dismounted. And the Witch King just ate him alive. And that was a big, big swing. It meant that his big threat, one of his big threats anyway, was down. And there wasn't much now that could threaten the Witch King. He did take a lot of chariot charges the next turn, but amazingly, his fell beast survived. It had taken a few arrows and was down to, I think, 1 wound, but amazingly, it survived the chariots and then was able to fly off. I successfully picked up the objective and climbed the wall to get it over the wall and towards my safety. So actually having that bigger section of wall was now helpful for me. So I now have the objective, and my line is still pretty much like this. It's taken a beating, but it's still fairly strong. And then a chariot runs through and ends his move here. It was insane. All game, the chariots maybe killed 10 up to this point. This chariot killed 10 in 1 charge. He took down 2 or 3 big, strong defense 6s, and then he went into trackers that are defense 3, and he steamrolled them. He then managed to kill the objective carrier. He carried on. He hit more and more and more guys. Grishnak, at this point, was stood up on the wall because he was trying to jump over and help out. I don't know what he was trying to do. He played a very, very bad game in this. He kind of won it for me in his heroic moves, but he got onto the wall. He avoided the chariot, but then he tried to jump down and pick up the objective because the chariot doesn't have expert rider. He can't pick up the objective even when he's killed the guy. Grishnak rolled a 1. So instead of falling down and picking up the objective, he fell down and broke his legs. He didn't take a wound, but Grishnak now prone. This was very, very tense. This was how to throw away the game kind of tense. I'd forgotten that I'd killed his leader, so I was thinking, without the objective, I've lost. But at any point, he could get the objective, and it was really, really tense. Fortunately, priority started going my way. I'd lost it all game, but now a few priorities went my way. I was able eventually to palm it off on the Witch King, and in the last turn, the Witch King, with the objective, managed to fly onto his board half, survive a few arrows, and it ended with him on the other board half for 5 points, and then also 2 for killing his leader. And it was a 7-3 victory. Very, very close. He was about 10 off break, and I don't even think I had 10 left. My army had been absolutely annihilated, but the Witch King was flying off with the objective. And so I should point out that while the scenario does end when both forces are 25%ed, at this event, all of the games run to 2 hours, and so this game timed out before he could completely table me, although it does also end when the objective is taken off the enemy board half, and there was nothing at this point that could stop the Witch King from flying off. So having won game 2, I go right back up to where we started at table 12, playing on that same board again, but this time on the other side. Not that it makes a massive difference, but at least it was a different view. My opponent had Minas Tirith, and this battle was the dreaded Contest of Champions. His army, as you can see here, had Iralas and a banner, with some warriors and some guards of the Fountain Court, as well as Madril with a couple more warriors and some rangers. And then a huge number of knights led by the fearsome Fight 7 Boromir with banner. This is quite a difficult matchup for the Witch King for Contest of Champions, but I had a plan and was going to give it the old college try. So I got priority on turn 1, and my opponent decided not to call any heroics. I'd sort of been talking about how the terror front line worked and those kind of things, and he decided not to call a heroic move, which was perfect for me because it meant I got the jump on all of his cavalry. I disengaged on the flank away from all of his infantry into a more secure position, and it stopped most of them charging. And it allowed me to get a heroic combat with the Witch King and Gorbag on someone where I would be able to get a hurl off through Boromir and all sorts of nastiness, and I was in a very strong position. So from that heroic move, I killed the guy with the Witch King so that I had at least one kill, then moved along, got a really good hurl through a load of his knights. By this point, half his knights are either dead or on the floor. Boromir's on the floor. And then this picture here is the next turn where Boromir is prone. The prone marker has fallen off him, but he's on the floor and he's transfixed. Gorbag's gone in. The Witch King is less than an inch away. He's guaranteed the barge. My opponent didn't put anything else into him to make that even harder. It was absolute golden opportunity. And then the game crumbled because the Witch King, Gorbag, and the 5 plebs in that fight rolled a 4 high. Boromir rolled the 6, even though Gorbag had struck and was a higher fight. I just didn't have the might in the fight left, lost the fight, and then the inevitable happened. And it was a very painful game. I'd put all of my resources into this. The Witch King only had 1 might left. Gorbag was out. Boromir surviving meant that over the next couple of turns, he killed the Witch King and everything else that he touched. He managed to get more than triple the Witch King's kills, and he killed the Witch King. With hindsight, the Witch King probably should have left Boromir and gone off and got kills just in case this happened. And then it would have been a sort of who can kill the most kind of game, which I guess Contest of Champions is meant to be, rather than just killing the leader. I think I went greedy here. I had 12 dice to get a 6. Odds are it should have gone my way, but probably should have gone for the safe approach. As it was a 12-0 defeat. My army crumbled without the Witch King. He is a large portion of that force. He's 200 odd points of the 700 points. So when he dies, the army really, really struggles. It was a really fun game. Madril carved his way through everything. He got more kills than Boromir and the Witch King combined. Madril was an absolute legend. Unfortunately, none of the star players of the game were for Mordor. They were all Minas Tirith, and as great as the game was, it was a resounding defeat, which sent me right back down to those middle tables. The saving grace of losing the previous game is that I was down on those beautiful scenic boards, and this board was amazing. Lake Town in all its glory, although, as you can see, potentially a bit of a nightmare to play on, especially as we were playing Hold Ground, the scenario where you need to get to the objective right in the middle of the board, and it's Maelstrom deployment, so we were going to have to come on and walk on. We decided that we would just call the water difficult terrain, so it halved movement, instead of having to mess about with swim tests and drowning and all of those kind of things that in a 2-hour game would have meant that we would have spent the whole thing posturing and would never have managed to get into the fight, especially as my opponent was playing dwarves. He had Balin, a King's Champion with those 2 banner-carrying heralds, and Floy, the absolute nightmare with a special rule that my opponent called No, which perfectly describes that he just looks in his book and shuts off your special rule, such as the Witch King's crown, or even the Fell Beast's ability to fly. So I was quite terrified of this special rule. This photo here is turn 2, but in turn 1, I had priority, and just Gorbag came on. The Witch King got a 2 and mited it down. Then in his move, Floy came on by himself, which was quite good because I then knew where Floy was. So that at turn 2, when I got priority again, Grishnak came on, sort of holding the left flank just in case anyone tried to come up that way. But the Witch King came on close enough to Floy that he couldn't get charged because of the difficult terrain. It would have taken a long time for the dwarves to get to him. But he was able to cast Drain Will on Floy. It took Floy down to 1 will, which meant he could only use that special rule once, and then over the course of the next couple of turns, finally managed to drain him of all his will. Floy does regain will if a hero dies, if a dwarf hero kills an enemy hero. So I knew that as long as I kept my heroes alive, that annoying ability was shut down for the remainder of the game. This photo was from a couple of turns on. The dwarf archers have been firing. I left just 2 trackers to fire back, mainly because 6 dwarves is quite a big chunk of his army, whereas a couple of trackers and spearmen didn't really bother me. I was happy just slowing him down, making him dawdle. All of his dwarves came on together, which was good in terms of keeping the cohesion of the army, but bad in that I was able to push on towards the centre while he was kind of stuck funneling through this gap, and it really hampered the dwarves. A couple of turns on, and we're probably past the hour mark. There are some combats, and importantly, a heroic move from Grishnak, who, at this point, as you can see, the dwarves, they're nearly past the kind of blockade of those stairs, some barrels, the house, and my guys were quite a way off still. Whoever won the heroic move roll-off was going to be able to push forward. I won it and managed to keep him about 9 or 10 inches away from the objective, and you need to be within 6 of it. If he'd have won, our entire fight would have been not only within the 6 inches of the objective, but also on a much wider front. With this heroic move and with the next, I was able to hold him back, and while my army crumbled to the might of the dwarves, he had a lot of iron guard, and he had a couple of foe spears, and they were just tearing me apart. Those 2 attack iron guard, winning every fight, every single roll-off. It was a bit of a joke. Every single roll-off to win a fight went to him. But the important one, realistically, was winning the roll-off for the heroic move, and that did go to me. So losing nearly 20 or so guys to his 5 dwarves, it didn't really matter, because from this point on, it was kind of sealed. The Witch King was able to just hang back and transfix Balin and just generally mess around, staying safe, because I was fairly confident that as the time ticked away, without any form of time wasting at all, it was just that kind of game, there was no real way for the dwarves to break through the Mordor line. There came a point at which I was getting a bit close to break, so instead of fighting sort of and going for kills, I was putting 1 guy into 3 dwarves and shielding and just trying to survive. But the objective was very much in my hands. This is the final turn. The dwarves still haven't been able to push through. There's a warg rider that was dismounted 3 turns before, still shielding away against overwhelming numbers. Some really, really lucky fights. Between that boat and the stairs, just a couple of guys held back an awful lot of dwarves. My line is looking very thin and precarious here, but the way that the scenery is set out, my small group is just holding them back. I've pulled Grishnak back because he got wounded and lost a fate against a foe spear, and I knew that if he died, Floy would regain will, and I didn't want him to shut anything down. So he backed away. Gorbag's still in there. He burnt 3 might just to get a kill, because the game, at this point, there were about 15 minutes left. I knew that it was pretty much the end, and he just wanted to get a kill. I think that took me from 4 to 5 kills. In a straight fight, these dwarves would have annihilated them. The Witch King is hiding behind the privy at the top, sort of top slightly left. He was potentially able to get shot because the dwarven archers had moved up. So in that final turn, I threw about 6 or 7 will into a black dart on Barlin, just because I had will to spare, to try and get an extra couple of VPs for a leader wound. Barlin, however, passed his single fate point on a 4. He was out of might and will at this point, but unfortunately, he didn't take that wound, although it was still already sealed. The Witch King then just dismounted and hid behind the toilets so that he couldn't get shot and risk giving away those points. So the game ended at 7-0. Neither of us broke. I was very close, but didn't break. Neither of the leaders were harmed, although we both gave it a little bit of a go. A couple of black darts here and there and a couple of arrows here and there in return against the Witch King. But I had the centre with 3 times as many as him, and it was uncontested. And that gave me 7 victory points. So it was a 7-0 win. It was a really, really fun game. He was a great guy. The scenario was against him, and definitely the board. It was a very, very difficult board for an army that struggles to move quite fast, which the dwarves definitely are lacking in that. And he needed all his might on Barlin for fighting and staying alive rather than calling marches. Although with hindsight, maybe a march would have been better for him. And splitting up his force again might have been better, because I wouldn't have been able to bottleneck him out. But hindsight is always 2020. So that then pushed me back up the tables again. And it was a second win for the forces of Mordor. My next opponent for Game 5 was Harry Parkhill from the Entmoot podcast. And he's also got a YouTube channel, Battle Games in Middle-earth, which I'll post a link to in the description. And his army was this ferocious Easterling horde, led by Camul on Fell Beast. He had a War Priest and also Amder on horse. And then a strong phalanx of guys, a banner, a drummer, and some of those new ninja assassins, acolytes, the 2-attack new Forge World models. Having lost my previous game, I was back down in the middle and on these beautiful scenic boards, and I'm sure you'll agree this is next level scenery. There were a lot of different elements to this, with the wall, the buildings, these tiered elements that had those stairs. It made the game really interesting. It did make it quite difficult, but it was really good fun. This is deployment. We were playing Breakthrough, the one where you have an objective in your board half, and then there's the 2 on either side, and yours is worth more to your opponent, not many to you, and vice versa, and you've got to try and break through, as the name suggests. And the way the table was set out meant that the objectives couldn't quite be where they were supposed to be, so his objective is slightly to the left of where it should be. It should have been inside the building. And it also, the right-hand objective should have been on top of the wall, but no one could actually get to it, and it would have been a very annoying place to put it. So we rolled off to see whether we put it on the inside or the outside of the wall, and it was on the outside. And I was quite happy with that, because you can't see here, but even from the word go, I deployed a model that was just within 6 inches still of the Witch King on the other side of the wall. Just a 5-point tracker, so it didn't matter that he wasn't engaged in the battle. Harry knew he was there, but there was nothing really he could do about it, because the Witch King was the last to deploy. Harry had already deployed, so he would have had to, as he discussed himself, fly over with Kamul, abuse him, come back, all just to deny me victory points. He wouldn't have been able to keep Kamul there and take the objective. So it was a good placement for me, not so much for him. Harry chose to deploy quite far back, which might have hampered him, although it did give him that strong defensive position. When the battle began, it was almost over before it had even started. Can't quite see there, but next to Kamul is a couple of guys, and the Witch King charged straight in there, casting a spell on Kamul, but it was resisted. And then I formed my guys up around the Witch King in such a way that no one could be hurled into him. However, Kamul then flew over, compelled my banner behind the Witch King, ready to hurl my own banner into the Witch King and defeat me before the game had even started. And this was a really, really bad way to start a game. This was a huge mistake on my part, and it was well played by Harry. Fortunately, I noticed before it was too late. As soon as I'd done it, as soon as he'd compelled, I saw the mistake. So I, in the combat phase, called a heroic combat. So did Kamul, and then it was a roll-off. Fortunately, it went to me. The Witch King was able to kill the guys that he was against. A couple more had charged in, but there were still only 3, and he killed them all. And then I debated whether going into Kamul, he'd have only been 2 attacks, but he was fight 6 because of his special rule. So I decided to play safe. I'd played bold and it had gone bad, but I'd been forgiven. So I decided to play safe and potter across. Ironically, the banner won the fight on a 4 high against Kamul. So if the Witch King had gone in against Kamul, he probably would have killed him and won the game almost immediately. But I played it safe. I'd learnt my mistake from the battle against Minas Tirith and flew off. Kamul, for the next few turns, proceeded to lose a couple of combats against my guys. He did kill a few. He finally managed to kill the banner, although it was picked up by someone else, which is why it's now an orc. But importantly, his line had failed so many courage tests that they couldn't consistently charge my wall of terror. So on one particular turn, they didn't engage it, and the Witch King went in and hurled all the way along. He killed a couple, knocking pretty much everything prone that you can see in there, and importantly, taking Amder off his horse. He sprung back to his feet with his special rule, but Amder was now no longer the complete killing machine that he otherwise would have been on that horse. Over the next few turns, Kamul, with a vendetta against my banner, hunted him down and finally killed him. It took him about 3 turns. It managed to hide round a building, and he kept chasing it down. I deliberately kept it fairly close to Kamul and vulnerable to effectively taunt Kamul into going after the banner, because the banner was no no VPs or anything, and it was a while away from my guys, so that Kamul wasn't going to be hurling into my lines and abusing my guys in the same way the Witch King was. And Kamul went after my banner as a bit of a source of pride. On the left-hand side here, you can see his War Priest with Gorbag facing off. Gorbag and the Witch King went in on the War Priest. Gorbag had might and called a heroic combat, so from that the Witch King then went off and abused the guy that was defending his objective, which held it. Later on, a Númenórean took his place and the Witch King managed to rejoin the fray. This is a photo of the end of the game. The forces of the Easterlings with Amda, they've done some good work killing stuff. I'm still a way off breaking. I think 10 away from break at this point. He just couldn't quite do it. Even if we'd had another turn, I still don't think I'd have broken. He was now surrounded, so he'd stopped getting a lot of those pike supports because some guys had gone all the way around the building that had been playing with Kamul before he flew away. You can't quite see because of the Witch King's wings on his fell beast, but there is a Black Númenórean on his objective. The Witch King and quite a few friends are on the objective that he's with. Over the other side of the wall, out of sight, near that dictaphone, there is the tracker on the objective, and then Kamul hasn't got my objective. He is engaged with a Warg Rider who he promptly dispatched, but the tracker and Orc there have run back. I kept a couple of guys running back. However many Kamul could kill, more were filtering back. So he didn't manage to claim that objective. And in fact, I actually got a victory point for having more than him on the objective. In the end, this game went to me simply because I had just done too much damage to him. I'd survived that initial mess up, and then it just went badly, really, for Harry. Not really through any point of fault of his own, just Kamul didn't really turn up. He spent a long time trying to kill the banner when he should have really killed it in one go. He just didn't quite come to the battle, whereas the Witch King did in a big way. He got a lot of kills and did a lot of work. I didn't actually write down what the score was, but I believe it was around about 10-0 because he'd broken, I hadn't. I had all of the objectives, and the only thing that hadn't happened was Amda was still unharmed, and the Witch King as well was unharmed as well. So it was a 10-0 victory, or thereabouts. So with that win, I'm back up on the top end of the tables on table 7, in with a chance at getting quite a high position if I can win this game. Not going to podium, but fairly high, so there's a lot riding on this game. And we're playing Divide and Conquer, where the warbands alternate deployment on opposite corners. So the forces are spread out across the board. And as you can see, he has Isengard, and it is a horrendously scary list. It's Assault on Helm's Deep, so he's got the Ballista. He's got the big beefy captain with the extra attack, who is leading, I think, 11 crossbows. A couple of them have pikes at the back, a load of berserkers. The other warband is a captain with a banner, a bomb, a load of guys with their pikes, a couple of shields, and some more berserkers. There are a lot of berserkers in this list. Really, really painful list. So, looking at it, thinking, I need to whip across the board. I need to get that ballista. I need to shut him down and do some killing. There's nothing that can strike, so the Witch King on Fell Beast is just going to rip through this. As long as I can survive the archery, then the Witch King is going to decimate on that Fell Beast. And I'm sure he would have. But this is halfway through movement of turn 2 and the Fell Beast is already not there. Because I was in a rush. We actually started 15 minutes late because we didn't realise it had started and we were still talking about our armies. So in a rush, deployed badly, and then ran the Witch King off with no one supporting him, even though the Warg Rider could have followed. And there was no one to scatter onto. Complete rookie mistake. He got 6 after 6 after 6 on the shot as well, which didn't help. But regardless, my mistake and the bad dice, immediately the Witch King takes a ballista bolt straight to his face and is thrown from his big flying Fell Beast. And to be honest, that was game over. I knew at this point that that my chances of victory were very slim, and so it just became the most enjoyable game of the whole tournament. I just threw everything in, we had a right laugh, and it was really, really good fun. A couple of turns on, my forces are just running up. They don't care about being tactical or hiding or anything like that. Grishnak sprinting to the centre, Gorbag running up towards the archers, and the leader just hoping to get some kills. Gorbag's lagging behind because he took a ballista bolt straight to the face, had to spend a point of might and his fate to stay alive. The Witch King, though, you can see at the top, has compelled someone close enough to charge, and that Warg Rider ran straight in front of the archers so that, assuming he survived, which I didn't really think he would, the Witch King would be able to heroic move and, with a compel, be able to get into one of the guys manning the siege engine, the Warg Rider into the other, to stop it from firing and hopefully destroy it. It was a real long shot at trying to destroy it, but it was the best that I could do. So the Witch King's heroic move managed to get the Warg Rider in. You can just about see him there right at the top. He's now surrounded and trapped, but he did take off enough people from the ballista to stop it firing. The Witch King's killing someone at the top, ready to heroic combat off. Even my banner has got stuck into the fight with the Witch King because a couple of guys that were in those ruins followed along. It's basically, at this point, I'm fairly confident the Witch King's going to die before the end of the game, so he might as well have fun before he dies. He's got loads and loads of will because he's not really doing anything with it. So he's just going to have fun. It was just carnage at this point. I was losing every single fight, rolling 1s and 2s. He was rolling 6s. So it was just throwing everything in and having a laugh while it died. Gorbag, in the next turn, managed to get into combat and promptly lost a wound and a fate to a berserker that rolled 2 6s. Everything was just madness. Grishnak and his friends were fighting along, and bizarrely, in a twist of fate, the captain next to Grishnak, the Uruk-hai captain, went in on 2, trapped by pikes and died, which was a nice little swing. And that also meant I was the only one with might down near that central objective. And then the bomb went off. I'd called a heroic move with Grishnak. He was still on full might, so he might as well. And I just wanted to tie up as much as possible so that he couldn't run the bomb in and destroy me without at least some collateral damage. And with the Legion special rule, that bomb was guaranteed to go off, which it did. And on the destruction table, whatever it's called, he rolled 2 d6 for wounds because he got a 6 on the detonation table, and amazingly rolled snake eyes. So everything took 2 wounds. It killed all the berserkers, all the Uruk-hai, all of the Black Numenorians and Spearmen and that Warg Rider around Grishnak. But Grishnak survived. It cost him his fate, but he rolled a 6 on that. He was loving life. So there was just a big crater, a load of dead Uruks and Orcs and Numenorians, and Grishnak stood full of fury. And from this point on, Grishnak just became a one-man army. He was calling moves, combats. He was not dying, calling standfasts when the point came. Not killing Grishnak here was massive and hilarious that he survived a bomb going off right in front of him. And because he survived, it kind of meant that bomb did more damage to him than it did to me, which was a very bizarre turn of events in a very bizarre game. While this is going on, the Witch King is still just on a merry rampage up at the top. He's not really killing anything, but he managed to get Instill Fear off once or twice, which was quite funny. And he just generally went around hitting stuff, casting the odd spell, and not dying. The banner survived right until the last turn. This is just about the last turn, this picture. My force broke and broke hard. Everything ran. The objective on the left, you can't quite see, but there is an Urukai hiding behind the building there. He's got that one. On the right, all of my guys are dead or ran. Grishnak is still keeping a couple of guys on the objective. That orc in the middle managed to hold on to it for as long as he could. There's 2 trackers holding back 4 Uruks, but he was able to run on and kill the orc. Grishnak, however, the champion that he is, successfully didn't die. He lost the fight against a berserker and a pikeman, but importantly, was able to back away within 3 of that objective, which took 2 victory points away from my opponent. He still had the centre, but it was 2 instead of 4. Grishnak, the unbombable king of this game, was, even in his final moments, an absolute legend. He'd not done a massive amount in the tournament other than sort of call moves and just be a heroic move caller. But in this game, he was absolutely on fire. Quite literally, as a bomb went off in his face. The Witch King did survive the end of the game. The banner finally died. He'd been tanking away, but finally went down. The Uruks were still quite a way off breaking, and my army was in tatters. The Witch King was down quite low on will because he'd chucked a high will black dart at the enemy leader in the last turn just to try and do a wound, but he resisted it. Either resisted it or passed his fate, but either way he didn't take a wound. And so the game ended. It was an 8-0 loss. I contested the central objective but didn't get any victory points for it. I just took victory points away, and I was very, very broken. He was unbroken, and my leader and his leader were both perfectly fine. They'd both done very little, although they'd been engaged quite a lot. They just, although actually his leader, to be fair to him, killed Gorbagan 2 in 1 round of combat. 3 attacks, 3 kills, one of which was Gorbag. Gorbag had heroic combated into him. It was very high risk. If it had paid off, it would have killed his leader. It might have swung things a bit, but it didn't pay off. But it was a very, very fun game. We both put this one down as our favourite game for the prize at the end for sort of most sporting favourite game, because it was just hilarious. It was a really, really good, really fun game, a really nice way to end the tournament on. So after that final game then, it was the prize presentation and the raffle as well. But we'll get to that in a moment, because one of the prizes, as with most tournaments, was best painted. And there's a couple of photos of some of these armies, which I'll put on, which were absolutely stunning. There were some really, really impressive armies at this tournament. There were loads and loads of lovely looking armies. This isn't all of them by any stretch of the imagination, and it's not that if it's not featured here, it wasn't a good army. It's just that there were so many beautiful ones, we can't show them all. But yeah, some really, really amazing armies. That one there with the snow was the ultimate winner of the best painted. Really, really nice looking armies. So then, finally, it was the award ceremony and the raffle. So first off, just look at those prizes. There's swords, there's a battle map, there's the new Dol Guldur ruins, paint sets, paintbrush sets, Weta workshop models, all sorts of incredible things. There's the wooden spoon itself is incredibly impressive. It's the mug with some various bits and bobs with it. Most sporting won something very large and impressive. I couldn't quite work out what that was. I was sat right at the back. This photo was taken a bit before this. And then first, second and third got those bronze, silver and gold golem statues. Really, really top level prizes, and just really, really impressed by the amount of effort that had gone into this. Not just the prizes, but the whole tournament was just really, really impressive. Massive, massive shout out to the team that have put this together. Top Table Steve, who has put in an awful lot of work into this, and all the other people that make the magic happen. And Element Games, who hosted it. They put on the lunch spread. They paid for that from Subway both days, as well as hosting the event. And the amount of time and energy that clearly went into this event was massive. The boards, the setup, there was a quiz, and pizza was facilitated on the Saturday night. It was a very, very well done event, and I am really looking forward to the next one. The next Scouring is in March, and there are going to be some more tickets made available, so do check out the Facebook page for that. If you're wanting to go, there's still an opportunity to get a ticket for it, even though it's currently sold out. I'll put some information on how to find that in the description below, but you'll have to act very, very fast, because I imagine that will sell out almost immediately. And I think that about sums it up. It was a really, really good weekend. I cannot wait for the next one. I can't recommend this tournament enough. The next one, early next year, March. If you do get the opportunity to go, you will not regret it. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Please do check out the other videos on the channel. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe. We've got lots of battle reports, and there's also the odd modelling video and other tournament reviews. Please do like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that bell button as well so that you're notified of future videos. Again, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.